you going, Master?
For a drink.
Sorry about the mess.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Hi, it's Greg.
Greg, welcome to Rebel Force Radio.
Nice to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. It's really an honor.
Okay.
You're kind of a big deal in Star Wars. You know that, right? Has anyone told you that?
Well, I mean, me and my brother did the poster 41 years ago for the first film.
Well, not just any poster, but one of the most iconic and celebrated images in all of Star Wars. So that's a pretty big thing.
Yes, done in 36 hours.
Wow. So 36 hours worth of work, and you've been talking about it for 40 years since. That's pretty good exactly. Return on the investment, right?
Well, if I knew it was going to last so long, I would spend 2 more hours on it.
Did you have 2 hours to spare?
I don't think. No, we did. I mean, look, they needed this picture fast because George Lucas apparently was not completely satisfied with what he had, which was the Tom Young poster. Right.
And why is that? It was very...
I know. I never met Mr. Lucas. So, I mean, when Tim and I did we had done a painting for the studio in Manhattan that was handling 20th Century Fox's account. We had done a painting overnight 3 years before for Young Frankenstein. It didn't get used, but the fact that we did it so fast was kind of like something that they remembered, along with the fact that it was multiple reasons. George Lucas apparently called them and told them that he wanted us because of our fame for the Lord of the Rings calendars that we had done in 1976, 77, and 78. But my point is that we were working on our own project, Urshirek, and we got a call from the studio, and they said they needed this poster fast. The film was coming out in a week. And so we went in and got it and went over it with them, and they showed us the Tom Young poster, and then we discussed the whole thing. I said, well, what do you want? We said, Tim and I, what do you want out of this? And they said, well, the director said he wanted it more comic booky looking. It was the only directive that we had. And on the way back from New York to New Jersey, where we lived, to my studio, Tim and I were analyzing, well, what does that mean? I mean, it doesn't mean a black outline with flat colors, so I figured, well, it's got to be more of a pulp look that he wants, something more pulp and more intense color. So that's what we did.
Yeah, and you did it to such a degree that design just evolved into something seen on everything way beyond posters. I think I had some bed sheets that had your design on it. There was bed sheets, there was curtains, there were pillowcases.
Yep.
It was all there, and it was in every kid's room in the late 70s, it seemed.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was, we had no idea. I mean, it's like, obviously we didn't see the film, and the guys in the studio, they didn't see the film. They didn't know what it was. Because they called in kind of like almost a desperate sort of like, hey, you guys got to help us out. We need a poster real fast. The film's come out in a week. And I said, well, what is it? They said, it's some kind of a science fiction movie. So we went in and we looked at all the pictures. And I said, well, who's this guy with the black helmet? And one of the guys said, the Man in the Iron Mask or something.
The Man in the Iron Mask.
But because they didn't know. I mean, they didn't see the film,
I am comparing the artwork, the iconic artwork that you and your brother created, and I'm comparing it to the original concept created by Tom Young. And when you go A-B between the two of them, the differences are vast and enormous. The basic concept is the same.
Yeah, right, yes.
But I do notice that you added so much more in the background, and this was all being done before even seeing the final film, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, Tim and I, well, we had been illustrating for years. So, I've done lots of children's books and advertising, and like I say, the Lord of the Rings are. So we were really into the whole scene as much as you could put in it, to get a feeling for a lot more than just two figures and the Darth Vader and the ships and the Death Star. So, I mean, that's kind of like what we did.
Did you guys know about the desert planet going into it? Because I see a lot of those elements in here.
No, we knew nothing. They just gave us, like I say, the Tom Young poster we looked at there, and then a bunch of black and white, 8x10 shots out of the film. And they also said, don't worry about the likenesses on the two principal characters because nobody knows who they are.
Right. Yeah. But then after the movie came out, didn't they put out another poster that had a more similar likeness to Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher?
Probably. I don't know. Maybe they did. I mean,
yeah, I don't remember myself. Something told me they did.
Well, we never did, but I mean, if somebody else did it, yeah, but we didn't do it,
Got it. But this image of Luke holding the saber over his head with Leia there at his side and she's holding the blaster, that came to represent Star Wars to me as much as seeing the logo or any other sort of imagery. It was just that particular pose. It even ended up on the old Kenner toy packaging.
Yeah.
And so when you saw it, you just felt like, oh, this is really legitimate. This is authentic. And when I was a kid, I read somewhere in a magazine or something, it was like, yeah, that's a Hildebrandt. And I was like, ooh, Hildebrandt. I was like, oh my God. I was thinking like, it's like a Da Vinci or something, just the way it was being described to me.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's like it blew a bee away in terms of the recognition that we got, because I mean, it was completely unexpected. It was a job we did,
Yeah.
I mean, we were professional illustrators that were hired to do a job, and we went in, picked it up, did the job to the best of our ability, which we always attempted to do, even in the short period of time that we had. But I mean, it was enjoyable as hell. And then we didn't have the droids in. I brought the picture back in the next day, or in 36 hours later, we went in, and I said, you need something in the background behind, over to the right over there. And they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, some figures, we had a bunch of shots of other characters of the Wookiee. And I said, this big hairy guy, wherever he is. So they said, wait a minute. And they went and gave a call, I guess, to Lucas. They didn't say who. They didn't tell us anything. And came back and said, no, they said, put the two droids in. So I said, okay. So we had a shot of them, and they went out and we told them what paint we needed, the colors that we needed. And they went up the street to an art store and bought the paint and the brushes and everything that we needed. And we painted it in their studio right there on the spot.
Greg, how big was the original piece?
Oh, geez. I mean, probably 3 or 4 feet tall.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. You just when this kind of artwork gets reproduced for 40 years, you never know exactly how big the real piece is. We've had a chance to see some of Ralph McQuarrie's work. Sometimes you're surprised at how big it is, but a lot of times you're surprised how small it is as well.
When I saw Frank Frazetta's work for the first time, like the Death Dealer, you figure that thing's got to be at least 6 foot tall, and it's a tiny little painting.
Yeah, right. You never know. So obviously the 36-hour turnaround is kind of famous, but can you give us an idea of why that was the way it was, and what kind of deadlines was the production up against, or as far as the marketing machine up against that you were aware of?
Well, the film was being released in a week. It was premiering in New York City in a 1 week. And they needed it quickly they told us the deal was, the agreement that we had with them was for the one sheet outside the theater and advertisement, newspaper ads. That's what they were going to use it for. And once we brought it in, a friend, Ian Summers, who was the art director at Ballantine Books and who had left and was started a book packaging company, was our agent back then, Ian. He called from the city and said, after the film was released and said, "Hey, I saw your picture walking around everybody's chest in the city."
That was everywhere. T-shirts, you name it. So, Greg, what I want to ask you is, do you know where the original painting resides these days?
Yeah.
Does George Lucas have it? Do you know where it is?
He never had it. Alan Ladd Jr., who was the head of 20th Century Fox and bought the, Star Wars, he had the poster. He had the painting,
Okay.
And then years later, I forgot how many years later, so a couple of years ago, Gene?
3 years ago.
3 years ago, a collector in Paris bought it from him. So it resides in Paris, and I understand he's giving it to a museum.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where it belongs for sure.
Well, he mounted a show several years ago at the Louvre in Paris, and that was like the centerpiece. It was a Star Wars show.
Oh my gosh!
So
that had to have been a thrill for you to know that.
It's a trip. I mean, you're in there with the Mona Lisa. You talk about right?
Well, I had a conversation once with a music conductor, classical music conductor, and we talked about how film scores is classical music for a generation, multiple generations, and in the same way, what some would have called pop art is now, in a sense, classical art. It's what we grew up with, and it's what we respond to, and.
Yeah, it was trash. It was all throw disposable junk back in the day. I mean, before, comic art, animation art, in illustration was all demeaned and derided and put down and debunked. And it's trash. It's junk. It's disposable. It's kitsch. Norman Rockwell. It was merely an illustration. That whole negative conversation. And then it turns around. I can't remember exactly how, but it turned around, and it turned around quick and big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so much to the point where George Lucas himself is taking his own collection of that very type of artwork, and he's building a museum in L.A. to house it all.
Yeah.
At the George Lucas Museum of Narrative Art. What did you think about that news when you heard that George was getting into the museum business?
Well, I thought it was fantastic. It was incredible. I mean, we were there at the ranch, at some point and saw a lot of this collection that he had, all the great masters, fantastic people that I've always admired and Tim always admired. And, Maxwell Parrish and Norman Rockwell and all the rest of them, N.C. Wyeth, Howard Pyle. These are all guys that I grew up on, J. Allen St. John, who illustrated all the Burroughs books, Tarzan and Pellucidar and John Carter. And to me, it was always fine art. I mean, I never had made a distinction. I hated that distinction, to put it down, to make it, demean it, put it in a subcategory.
I think for a lot of folks, it's interesting to hear about how you and your late brother Tim worked together as a team. I mean, not only were you partners, you were twin brothers. What was that dynamic like? How did you know when to pass it off to Tim and vice versa? How did you work together as a duo and coming up and developing the same vision, the same piece?
Well, I mean, we were, again, like as you say, we were twins, so we were, womb mates. I mean,
right.
So we were like together from the very beginning, and we made, and drew, and painted, and created, and since God, I can't remember, since the beginning, since we started working, drawing, and we made masks and puppets and costumes and theatrical pieces, little theater sets, and then got into film and 8mm movie making. We built and constructed everything together all of our life. So it was to him and me, it was not unusual. It was just what we did, And then when it came to the commercial work professionally, to Star Wars and all the other work that we did, in this particular case, Star Wars, we went in and picked the job up. Yeah, we got on the train, went into the city after they called us. It was probably midday, sometime noon. And by the time we got home, it was like, 4 or 5 o'clock 6 o'clock at night. And we did a sketch. I grabbed my then first wife and then a friend and put some, a bathrobe on him. One that I was using for my Elf Prince Urshara, the ale one. It was a terry cloth short bathrobe. I was using the same thing already. I would have shot, models for this character that I was painting. And then my wife, and they said, well, make sure that her skirt is torn. They want to see her leg, Oh, yeah. I said, all the shots of Carrie Fisher, she's dressed like a nun. I said, there's nothing there. So they said, they don't care. I said, at that point, when the comic booky directive came in, I got it. It's like a pulp cover,
Yeah, right,
I got it.
Right.
That's sort of like what I thought of as I painted it,
Yeah.
And Tim also. And but when we worked together on that, then so we've shot the pictures, Polaroid shots, black and white Polaroid shots, which I still have of the models, and then did a finished drawing. By this time, it's getting on pretty late, probably 11 o'clock at night. And we drew the whole setup, the Darth Vader and the Death Star and all the ships and the buildings and everything. And gessoed a piece of masonite. That's what we painted on back then. Masonite panels, wood panels. And put a coat of white gesso, several coats, sanded it all down, transferred the drawing via a piece of transfer paper, tape the drawing down onto the board, and then stick a piece of carbon paper underneath, and then go with a ballpoint pen and transfer it to the board. That's the process so far. But the thing is that gets you too. You got this high-tech movie, right? And this like process of painting this poster went back to the caveman. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
And then we transferred it. I forgot one of us went to sleep then by this point. We stayed in my studio, and I can't remember exactly who did it first, but one of us took a nap while the other guy started the painting. We mixed the colors all up first. We determined our color palette.
Yeah.
That's what we thought. We would do that together for every painting. When we worked on a painting together, discussion of the palette. What's the lighting? What's the color of the light? What color should the blues be? And what's the breakdown of the blues? What's the breakdown of the warm colors in the foreground? And how intense should the yellow light in the foreground be? How blue should the blue be? And what color of blue? And all that discussion is taking place as we're mixing the color up. And that we mix the paint up. It's acrylic in very precise, succinct piles of paint from the highlight to the shadow, to the deepest color, a series of values of about, say, maybe 7 values from light to dark, stepping down like in a grayscale. Okay? Mm-hmm. And that's how we mix color. Because, we needed to evolve a method of mixing color together that was very precise and exact so that we could switch it back and forth, that Tim could take it home or I could take it, to my studio and paint off of it. In this case, we mixed the palette up, and then I forgot one of us went to sleep and one guy started painting in the space. So you start at distance first, the background, and move to the foreground. And this is when we first, on our own paintings of Urshrak, which we had already been painting, Tim and I discovered dioxazine purple, which is this deep, deep, deep purple color that we paint to. So we used that for the first time. Aside from our paintings for Urshrak, this was the first commercial job that we did. We used that purple in the sky, in the space, to get the depth of it. And then Tim or I, whichever one of us, started painting maybe for about 2 hours, 3 hours, and then woke up the other guy. And then the other guy went to bed. The other guy picked it up. Now, we did that for, once or twice, and then we just woke up and stayed on it together because we sat with a palette between us, and Tim on one side and me on the other side, and painted at the same time on the painting.
Is that common for people who work together to sit side by side like that, or is that just something that's innate to you guys being twins?
Well, yeah, right. I've never heard it before. I know there have been teams of people, either twins or husbands and wives, who were artists who worked on the same picture, but I think they didn't work it that way. So one might probably just specialize in doing the drawing, the layout, the other one do the painting,
right?
Like that. But as far as this kind of thing, we were able to do exactly the same stuff. And when we came together on the painting, you couldn't tell the difference of who did what.
So when you would get to the middle at the same time, would you guys struggle for territory or start elbowing each other? I was here first.
Yeah, exactly. And hope that it matched.
Yeah, right. But it always did, which is incredible. Is it true you guys
No, that was starting. What was what true? I hear I'm answering the question before you even asked me.
Well, I had heard that you guys sitting there in that unique way of working on the same piece of artwork together. You guys never broke into an argument or anything over a piece.
No. What? Well, yeah, no, we didn't. We never argued. No, you're right. I mean, I don't know where you heard that, but no, we would discuss it and analyze it. And generally, by this point that we had done so many paintings together, where if we said, it's a blue light, we knew exactly what color blue we were talking about with this kind of space thing. You get me? Mm-hmm. It's a phthalo blue that we use for the lighter blue. And then as you get into the darker blues, you're using ultramarine, which is the red blue. The phthalo blue is the yellow blue. And phthalo and ultra is the red blue towards purple. So we knew that. I mean, we knew exactly what colors we're going to use just by saying, okay, so yellow light, which goes to orange, which goes to reddish, which blah, 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 goes into purple. So we knew all that stuff just by, saying it. And
see, I love my brother, but if we were sitting together working on something so precise and personal as a piece of artwork, we would definitely get into a fist fight. I know that would happen.
No, well, maybe we did when we were little kids. Yeah. I mean, we fought a lot. But as we got older, you're kind of like, your brain, when it came to work, our brain was one brain. It was a weird thing, It would just become one unit, We were completely different individuals, personality-wise. And then when we worked on our own stuff individually, well, there was a distinction, that you could see that was there.
And now you've had this opportunity to actually recreate the original Star Wars movie poster that essentially made you and your brother household names amongst us Star Wars fans. And so how did this whole project start? You actually recreating the poster artwork?
It ties in sort of like with the idea we're talking with Gene about, like, if I was an illustrator back in the time that when I was a kid, when I saw all the movies that I loved as a kid, and I was an adult illustrator, and I was hired to do the job, and like, well, how about painting those posters? So the one I just kind of arbitrarily started because I loved the film was the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I did a painting of that a little while ago, and then the next one I did was King Kong, the original, the one and only, the 1933. Well, so Brian Schultz, Cooper, and the only one as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with you. I brought up this 1976 version on the show just recently. Yeah, and I said it was terrible, and I still stand by that. Somebody sent me an email saying, how dare you say bad things about the 76 Kong, and I still stand by that. The original is the one and only 1933, baby.
Yeah, come on. It was beautiful. I mean, the design, the glass art, the island, the beauty of that island, my God, it was incredible.
Yes.
The painting I did, we were talking, the first one I did was like the size of a one-sheet proportion, the Creature from Black Lagoon. And then Gene and I were talking, we said, well, how about the size of a three-sheet? They originally the three sheets, glued together. And that would be 86 inches tall. Not that I did it in three sheets. It's one piece of canvas. But the Kong one is 86 inches tall. So that I like painting big. And that's kind of like one of the biggest things that I've done so far. And it's got more of an impact. And you really get more into it, as a painting. But then, so along that line of going back and I'm finding out, that there's this whole underground sort of like movement of people that want to get back to painted movie posters.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
The latest being latest being Drew Struzan, and Amsel before him, and then Peak, and my God, all those people that did this great work. And so then along that line, it became, well, how about if I repainted the Star Wars poster now by myself and do it, see how if I could recall all the colors, pull the thing off, and paint it in 36 hours, like Tim and I painted it together.
Ooh.
Sort of like as a challenge, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And so Gene kept a clock on me, and that's it. I painted it in 36 hours. It wasn't quite as big as the other one, but I kept it a little bit smaller so it wouldn't conflict with the original painting. And so that's how that came about.
That's amazing. And so that actually is going to be on display next week in New York ComicCon at your booth.
That's right.
Which is booth 1764. You go there, you get your picture taken, and with Greg and the painting. So so that's very cool that Star Wars fans will be able to see you and that iconic recreation of an iconic piece of artwork. They'll be able to see it right there at your booth. And then you're auctioning it off in November at gottahaverockandroll.com.
Yes.
Which is an online auction site devoted to rock and roll and pop art. So that's a one of a kind right there.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. I've never done it. People have asked me for years to redo it and paint it, and I said no for years. And then finally I says, well, what the hell? It's 41 years ago. Let's just see what happens here. You know?
Did you? I'm sorry. Did you need the full 36 hours when you did the recreation, or did you?
Yeah.
Did you finish under the?
I painted up to 36 hours and quit.
Okay. All right. That's
the interesting thing is, which I never noticed, and obviously no one else has ever noticed, that if you take a look at Princess Leia's hand holding the gun in the original painting, she's only got 4 fingers. Now, I don't know why the hell that happened or how it happened back in the day. Maybe it was because
oh my gosh, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
She got 4 fingers. So I'm painting a new one, and I'm talking with Gene. I'm saying, should I paint? Oh my God, I got to fix this. And then I was like, no, keep it exactly like it was, 4 fingers.
Yeah, authentic. you must have been painting her hand like during hour number 35 or something.
Either that or I got Frodo mixed up in, you know what I mean?
So, Greg, we didn't give you really a proper intro, and I have one here courtesy of our friends at ABC 15 in Arizona. And I just want you to listen to this little intro, and then maybe we could fact check it after she's done.
Talking about Star Wars here, and a lot of times when people talk about Star Wars, they automatically think George Lucas.
That's right. Right. But you should be thinking Greg Hildebrandt. He's actually joining us here now. He was one half of the team, the brothers Hildebrandt, and they were handpicked by George Lucas to do all of the artwork for Star Wars. That is incredible.
That is incredible.
Oh, remember that. I'm sitting at this live show, and what the hell did she say? I did all the artwork for stuff. I mean, what the? And I couldn't say it. I got embarrassed. I turned red. I didn't know what the hell to say. I said, this is insane. Why do people get the damn facts right, for God's sake?
It made me laugh. She said all of the artwork.
Oh, it's not enough that you did the one poster. Everything's got to be more, bigger, and 20 and 50 and thousands,
when you think of the team of thousands of artists that worked on Star Wars, it all got boiled down to the Hildebrandt brothers. And so that's...
It angers me because it's like, can you look at all those artists out there? They're going to think I said that, or I'm, you know what I mean? Or I'm pushing that forward or some goddamn thing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think we all know when you're on one of those, the local news shows, what
it's not accurate.
Right.
Nobody talks to you ahead of time. They don't come in. I never met the lady. We walked out the set and she starts talking.
Yeah.
It's like she's asking you questions about anything ahead of time.
Yes, fake news.
Yeah, basically.
But I did want to say too that, of course, in addition to the great movie poster, I do remember back in the mid '90s when the Shadows of the Empire sort of multimedia extravaganza was happening, and I believe you and your brother did some of the trading cards for Topps. For that.
Yeah.
And there's one in particular is always my favorite, where it was a meditating Luke in his Jedi robes thinking about Leia, and it's burned in my brain as a personal favorite.
Yeah, those were quickly done too. We had a pretty fast deadline on that, and 4 months to do 100 paintings, come up with them. And then, fortunately, I'm thinking, well, where the hell are we going to get all the costumes? So we got pose. They shoot models, take pictures. But we had connected with a collector who had this vast collection of costumes and props. So he brought his stuff all over to the studio, and we shot for several days and took all the pictures from the layouts that we had done.
Do we know him? Who was the collector?
I don't remember his name right now. He was a lawyer, but a total fanatic. And the way we work is, I work anyway, under any circumstances, do sketches first, read the text, whatever it is, or the description, and do everything right off the bat with no referencing. Just get the setup and the layout, and the lighting and the pose and the attitude. And then get the models and the props and the costumes and make them conform to that sketch, the original sketch.
Yeah.
So it works.
Now, something we didn't get to, and that is, so here you are, you're sequestered in the studio for 36 hours. The film's going to premiere in a week. How long from the time that you did the work that you finally got around to seeing this little science fiction movie that was going to potentially change your life? Did you run off to the theaters to see it opening week? Or
it was a couple of weeks. See, the thing was this. Here's a little detail. Tim and I were working on Urshak, our own novel. I don't know if you know anything about that. Mm-hmm. We had, after the third Lord of the Rings calendar, we said to Ian Summers, this should be a movie. This should be a live-action film, The Lord of the Rings. And he said, let me check on it. And by this point, he's left Valentine. He's an agent now. And he checked on it and says, Saul Zaentz is optioned it. Saul Bass is, not Saul Bass, Ralph Bakshi is animated. So right. They got the rights, so forget about it. So then I said to Tim, well, let's do our own story. So they sent the fourth contract for the rings over, and we sat and we came up with a concept and a story, and we figured we had it in motion, so we started drawing it and laying it out in paintings and drawings and writing it out and doing storyboards and designing all of our characters. And I had come up with this group we called the Allied Band. It was derivative of, the rings and a lot of other quest things. And of Eowyn, the elf prince, the white prince, with the blonde hair and the white tunic and the sword, Elfgard. And then Zyra, the Amazon princess. And we had this tall Sasquatch character called Ulu. He was 7 foot tall, hairy guy, a couple of dwarfs. And Eowyn's protagonist was his ancestor, Torgon, the Death Lord of Golgarath. Yeah. And Torgon was an elf gone bad back eons ago and had ensconced himself up north in Golgarath. And Eowyn was the one and only one that could pitch battle with him and off him. And they're related. Torgon is Eowyn's ancestor. Now, the way we designed Torgon, had the painting all done already and all my designs. He was about 7 foot tall, carried this huge mace, was clad all in black armor and black mail with a black helmet with slits for eyes and horns. So that our plan was never to see the guy. Because that whole concept that, if you see it, it's just another ugly face, Right. But the unseen is more terrifying. So then all this is in motion. Nobody knows this story except Tim and me. We're enclosed in my studio coming up with this for a couple of months or so. So just I knew about this. So we went in and picked up the job, and I'm looking at all these shots. I'm saying, what the hell's going on here? Because it was like this weird similarity to the characters, to the three principal characters.
Wow.
So when we got back and finally did the poster, I was really depressed. Let's put it that way. Because the film came out and the world went insane.
Yes.
It went nuts. And I've got my story I'm still working on. Bantam has already bought it, Bantam Books, and we've got to finish it now. And I'm so depressed. I'm seeing Torgon. I can't paint him that way. I can't make him look that way, because once the book comes out, everybody's going to say we copied Darth Vader. And I had to reduce our Gorpy, our Ulu character, from a 7-foot guy down to about a 3-foot guy.
Do you think we could ever potentially see an Ursharak film?
Well, no, not anymore. We worked our butts off trying to get it. The William Morris Agency picked it up back then, and oh my God, we were crazy. There was all kinds of. John Dykstra was on board. He was going to do all the effects. He liked what he saw. He was on board. And then he got Dennis Linton Clark. He was going to do. He had just done Comes a Horseman. He was doing the screenplay, doing a great job. And then he said he could do it for $30 million back then. This was 1978, 79. Star Wars the original was done for $10 million. Dykstra said he could do it for 30. And then the William Morris Agency handling it. They're pitching all over Hollywood. People liked what they saw, because by this point, we were pitching this for, I don't know, 5 months, in 6 months. And by this point, we had kind of like made a mini movie of it, so that we didn't have to do a slideshow and act it all out. And Joseph E. Levine looked at it along with Gabriel Katzka, his partner. And he said, he looked at our screening and he said, this is going to cost $145 million, in his opinion, to make in 1979.
Wow.
And that's what sank it. I mean, the William Morris Agency, they called me the next day and said, how's it go? Don't throw good money after bad or bad money after good. So they pulled out.
Well, I mean, do you think that was so long ago? The business has changed so much. And quite honestly, properties like yours, I think, have a higher value now than they ever have in Hollywood. Let me represent you. The hell with William Morris.
Yeah.
Let's take Ursharak to the next level.
Yeah. No, look, I'm working on a bunch of other stuff, which I don't want to talk about right now. Got projects going, and so I'm moving ahead. That was then. This is now.
Yeah, that was the past. That was the past.
I don't know if we could get one meeting. I think, but or you could just keep doing Comic Cons, whatever.
But Greg, did you have the same? I mean, you said that you were kind of depressed when you saw the film, but
depressed in that it was so.
Yeah, right. Because it felt like, oh my gosh, now what we've been working on could come across as a copy of this. But so many people that saw that film for the first time back in 1977 still remember the goosebumps they got when that Star Destroyer came over the top of the screen. Were you able to at least lose yourself in those moments?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, completely. I mean, I couldn't. They invited us to go to the New York screening, and I couldn't do it. I was too freaked out. You know what I mean? I was just like, I could. Then, some time went by, and I went, my kids, I mean, obviously they went nuts. My son, he's the original Star Wars kid,
Yeah.
And so, then when I saw it was incredible. It was fantastic. I loved it.
Wow.
Has anyone ever approached you and pulled up their sleeve and they had the poster you and your brother did tattooed on their bicep?
I'm sure, they have, yes.
Well, if you have one, if you have a tattoo on somewhere on your body that you can display appropriately in a public area, and you find yourself at the New York ComicCon next week, visit Greg at his booth, number 1764, and check out the amazing recreation of that original Star Wars movie poster art that's so iconic that everyone knows. It was all over the place and still is. It still is one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars art of all time. Okay. Everything from the pose to the colors to the environment, just everything about it feels so authentically Star Wars. And we have you and your brother to thank for that. So thank you so much, Greg, for taking the time with us. Best of luck with all of the things. You sounds like you have so many great things happening.
Yeah, I still got a lot of stuff happening.
It sure sounds like it. And it's been an absolute honor and pleasure for Jason and myself to be able to spend a little time with you here on Rebel Force Radio.
Fantastic. Nice being here, guys.
Rebel Force.